Hey guys, it's G. So today I want to talk to you about a new cell activator recipe that, I made out of necessity at the time. So as some of you might know, I've been moving houses recently, and on one particular trip, I was left in my old apartment with limited supplies. And one of the things I had on hand was enamel paint, like the original oil-based enamel paint, and a little bit of PVA glue. So without any other oil additives on hand, I figured, what the hell, let's see how they react. So this pillow is the usual, house paint and pouring medium. Thin slightly because our house paint is it's not fluid. And I find that if you have a little lump in the center that raises, the vertical of the color puddle, this is basic physics. The higher it is, the more it'll spread. If it's very flat, there's more friction with the bottom paint. So what I'm going to be showing you here is essentially my process of troubleshooting and getting this cell activator recipe to work. Now, when I say oil-based enamel paint, I don't want you to misunderstand and think that the base for this cell activator is actually oil paint. It's not. It's just a drizzle of the enamel and a drizzle of the glue, because I find the glue keeps it together. Well, I tried this without the glue. I don't have footage of that, unfortunately, but when I did try this without the glue, the cell activator fell apart completely on the canvas, as expectedly when you put oil paints on top of, or an oil additive on top of a water-based paint. So everything here is on the thicker side. All the color puddles are house paint. I'll put the recipe on screen for you. It's basically colored house paint that I had colored at the store and just thinned with a little pouring medium. My pouring medium is a paint conditioner, so it's similar to float roll, just a little bit runnier. So in my ratio, when I say 2 parts house paint to 1 part pouring medium, if you're using float roll, you should water down your float roll 3-to-1, float roll to water, and then use my ratio. That's for the colors. Now, in the cell activator, the issue I'm trying to point out by leaving this video in is that even if you have the right ingredients, and theoretically this cell activator should work, if it's too thick, as you see here, it's going to have a hard time creating that well-defined lacing pattern. You can see there is a reaction. It's just not the look that you want when you're creating a bloom. A few more blows to the center to maybe get through to the yellow layer. But see, overall, I'm not happy with the results here. Now, because it's difficult to actually display density scientifically with a number, because the hardware that checks for density is expensive lab equipment, I'm going to try describing it to you. So the pillow and the colors should be thick. They are quite thick, but still fluid enough to actually move when tilting, when blowing on it. If it goops, as in it feels like it has peaks, that's a little bit too thick. And when we say the cell activator is thinner than the colors, I mean only slightly. It's not much thinner, it's not runny, it's just slightly thinner than the colors. Okay? So I'm not going to detail this particular recipe because this was unsuccessful by the standards that I set for myself. See, like, the cells aren't really well defined. It just looks like a bunch of colors floating in like a black abyss. Interesting if you have no expectations, but if you're looking for a bloom, this is not really what you want. But I left this in here because I want to show you how to fix this if your cell activator looks like this. So in this second take, let me explain my cell activator recipe here. I'm actually using watercolors. That's right, I'm using a tube of watercolor, a black watercolor tube very small, not super high end, but also not entry level round watercolor cakes, because those are nonsense, they're terrible. So here we'll add some of the base paint, some of the house paint, sorry. My house paint is just base A, titanium white house paint, and the pouring medium. And what I'm doing here is, if you reuse your cups, sometimes unfortunately you'll have solids, so I kind of go through the circle with a skewer to make sure there's no solids, and also spread the paint to the corners, because even if you have a perfect circle on a square canvas, when you spin it, the corners get left out. So to avoid excess paint, we just push the paint out to the corners to promote even spread. Cool. So let's add the colors again. I haven't really changed the colors of the pillow from the last one. What I did change is the cell activator. So while I add the colors, I told you I'm using watercolor paint. Now watercolors are water soluble. They are not permanent the way acrylic paints are. You can easily wash them off. And at the same time, watercolors aren't really fully opaque. So, as you know, opaque paints are best for cell activators. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna add a little bit of my pouring medium, which is a paint conditioner. If you want to mimic, use float roll, oat roll, whatever paint conditioner is available to you. And then I add a pinch of glue, and make sure the glue is less than the amount of paint you put in, because if it's too much, you'll get what's called flocculating, where the pigment breaks up and you start seeing what looks like bits of paint. It literally looks like solids breaking up from the pigment. And I add to that a little drizzle of oil-based enamel paint. Not the water-based enamel paint, the oil-based enamel paint. And oil-based enamel paint, if you've seen it before, is quite thick. So the difference here is that my oil additive, instead of being something very runny and very slippery, here the oil additive actually adds to the thickness and promotes the cell activator moving without losing its form in a way that I prefer to the Minwax pre-stain, for example. So as you can see, we're getting a very, very strong reaction, and a large part of this is due to, you need to understand that the cell activator reaction is not about the oil additive. It's not really about the paint conditioner you're using. It's the pigment in the paint. That's what reacts. That's what causes if you've seen the Rayleigh-Taylor instability, when less dense fluids or gases, but in our case it's just fluids, are pushed on top of more dense fluid, that effect that looks like cells and lacing is actually that. It's the Rayleigh-Taylor instability. And what causes it here is not, well, I mean, if you've tried just two different density fluids, they don't always create cells or form lacing. What adds to that is the paint conditioner, which helps it spread, the oil additive, which helps it run. And yeah, you can see the difference here between this and the first experiment. So, just for fun, we're gonna try the same recipe again. Let's see if we can duplicate the results. So we'll add our colors again. Yep. It's a nice good spread. We'll add our cell activator in the middle. Now I also want to point out, you see the way the color puddle is stacked, how the colors only cover so much of each other. That is a good way to wind up with not seeing all the colors in the finished bloom. I've recently found out from my own experiments that if you have the colors completely go over each other, so they don't look like rings inside each other, what you will wind up with is more gradients inside your cells, as opposed to the top two colors and then the bottom two disappearing and flying off the canvas, which is what ends up happening even here. So blow again. Again, all these colors, are house paints. It's just the cell activator that's made with watercolor, enamel paint, glue, and the paint conditioner. Now, I know people have had success with just glue in their medium for a cell activator. I have some moderate success with that, but I constantly try new cell activator recipes because of the limited supplies that I have and very, very limited access to high-end materials. So here's a close-up. See, it reacts better than any cell activator that I've developed or copied so far. So we'll just nudge this paint around some more. And yeah, as I was saying, these recipes, the reason I developed them, I'm not saying Australian float roll doesn't work. I'm not saying, Sheldon's watered down float roll doesn't work. I'm not saying Minwax doesn't work. I'm just saying this is one way you can try it out, that for the first time I'm getting really good results with really thick recipes, which, if you know anything about the bloom technique and Shelley's original recipe, the paint is quite thick in her original recipe. This is the only time I've been able to have a thick paint recipe and get good reaction, good spread, good definition on cells and lacing. The cell activator recipe is nothing like her original, but the results are very similar. Here we go, here we spin. Now do you see how the majority of the yellow and blue went off the canvas? That's because the rings of circles in the puddle didn't completely cover each other. It was a smaller ring inside the larger ring, so the bottom rings kind of fly out, or you have to really push the paint down to get them to appear. There you go. That's my new cell activator recipe. Thanks for watching, guys. This was G, and I'll see you in the next video.